The bus to the train station bumped along the broken road, and I held the small bag of sandwiches for Agustin tightly in my hands. My brother sat next to me, staring out the window at the low houses of our town, silent. We had talked about everything during the 3 days he had been with me, but now we both realized that we were close to parting. Last night we sat on the veranda drinking coffee and reminiscing about our childhood. Agustin told me how he got a job as a watchman at a textile factory in Medellin, how he lived in a small apartment next to the factory buildings. The work is not difficult. Walk around the territory, make sure that no one is not climbing where not necessary, record the readings of devices. The salary is small but stable, and it's enough for him to live modestly. "Amelia," he finally said, turning to me, "you realize you have nothing to do here. The house is small, the money is barely enough, and you have almost no friends left." I nodded, not taking my eyes off his straining hands. Agustin had always been a practical man. After my husband died, he was the one who'd helped me with the paperwork, the one who'd sent me small sums of money when my pension was in short supply. When I was in hospital with pneumonia a 1.5 years ago, it was Agustin who came and sat by my bedside and talked to the doctors. But living with him, in a strange city, among strangers, it scared me more than loneliness. "I have a free room there," my brother continued. "The work at the factory is not difficult. Maybe there is something for you. You might need help in the canteen or in the accounting department, sorting out papers. The neighbors are good, the market is nearby, the center is half an hour away by bus." "Agustin, we've talked about this," I said quietly. "This is my home, where I lived with Emilio for 27 years. This is where my parents are buried." He sighed and pulled a crumpled photograph out of his shirt pocket. It showed him and me, still young, standing outside our parents' house. I was about 25 at the time, Agustin 28. I had just married Emilio, and my brother had not yet decided whether to commit himself to the family. "Remember how Mom always said family should stick together?" he said, hiding the picture back. "After my parents died, you and I have no one else." "There's Rodrigo," I objected. "Rodrigo?" Agustin shook his head. "He's a good son, I'm sure, but he can't keep up. He's lost his job, he drinks, he's fighting with his wife. What help is he gonna be?" We both knew it was a sensitive subject for me. After my husband died 2 years ago, it was as if I'd grown roots in this small house. Every corner reminded me of our life together. Everything held a memory of a time when I wasn't alone. Emilio died of a heart attack on the job. He was a foreman at a brickyard. He was only 57 years old. The station greeted us with the usual clamor. People with suitcases and bags were hurrying to the trains. Some were saying goodbye. Some were meeting relatives. Peddlers offered water, cookies, and newspapers. The train for Medellin was already standing at the platform, the cars painted in the usual yellow and blue color, windows open. In July, even in the morning, it was stuffy. "There's still time," Agustin said, looking at the big clock above the entrance to the station. 20 minutes to departure." We walked to a bench near the platform. Agustin pulled a crumpled pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, a habit he'd never kicked despite my entreaties. He lit it, covering the light of the match with his hand against the breeze. "You know," he said, taking a drag, "Medellin has a better climate. Not so hot in the summer, not so rainy in the winter, and there's a good hospital nearby if anything happens." I didn't say anything. My health really wasn't what it used to be. My blood pressure was skyrocketing, my legs were swollen in the evening, my back hurt after any physical work. The doctor at our polyclinic, a young guy who had just recently arrived from the institute, said that it was age-related you should take care. "At least call Rodrigo more often," Agustin said, letting out his smoke. "You have a good son, but life has taken its toll on him. He's lost his job, his wife's in trouble. But he's not a bad guy." I remember how he was as a boy. I remembered little Rodrigo, a cheerful, inquisitive child who was always hanging around his father, helping him in the garden, asking 1,000 questions. Emilio loved him, took him fishing, taught him to work with his hands. My son grew up an ordinary boy, not an excellent student, but not a double, not an angel, but not a bully. Everything changed after his father died. Rodrigo was then 32 years old. He had already been married to Dolores for 2 years. Emilio's death seemed to knock the ground out from under my son's feet. He started drinking, first on weekends, then more often, then every day. He got worse at work, the bosses reprimanded him, finally fired him. Dolores is not an easy girl, Agustin continued, but she loves him, you can see that. Maybe something will work out between them. Maybe, I agreed, though deep down I doubted it. My sister-in-law had always seemed too harsh, too demanding. It was as if she was always dissatisfied with what she had and blamed everyone around her. When she and Rodrigo were first married, she often talked about wanting a better life, about striving for more, about not settling for less. Dolores worked then as a cashier in a home appliance store, earning a good salary by local standards, but she wanted more: beautiful clothes, jewelry, trips to the capital. Rodrigo tried to please his wife, taking part-time jobs, saving on himself. And then Emilio died, and everything went downhill. The train gave the first horn, and the passengers began to board. Agustin put out his cigarette and got up. "Well, sister," he said, hugging me, "take care of yourself. And remember, if anything happens, if things get tough, I'm always here for you. One call and I'll be there, or you can come to me." "Thank you," I whispered, feeling a lump come up in my throat. "You take care of yourself, too. Be careful in the factory, don't catch cold at night." He took his worn travel bag and went to the carriage. He turned around again and waved from the window as the train started to move. I stood on the platform until the train disappeared around the corner, and only then did I realize how much I missed the warmth of a human being, the simple presence of a relative near me. The way back home seemed to me especially long. The bus was almost empty, only a few women with bags from the market and an old man dozing at the window. The conductor, a full middle-aged woman, dozed in her seat, occasionally waking up to check tickets for new passengers. I looked out at the familiar streets and thought about Agustin's words. Maybe he was right? Maybe I should try to start a new life somewhere else. In Medellin, there are more opportunities, more people, more life. Here, it's like time stopped 10 years ago. Our little town was really fading. It used to be a small but thriving rural center. There was a brick factory where my husband worked, and a garment factory where they sewed simple clothes for the local stores. Now the factory was closed. It became cheaper to bring bricks from the capital. The factory also could not withstand the competition with Chinese goods. Young people moved away, to Bogota, to Medellin, to Cali. There were mostly elderly people who had nowhere else to go, and a few families who clung to their homes out of stubbornness or lack of money to move. But as soon as I imagined having to pack up, sell my house, leave Emilio's grave behind, my heart ached. No, I'm not ready for that kind of change. Not yet. At the post office, I saw a familiar figure. Patricia Castillo stood at the entrance, sorting through letters. My friend had always been a neat woman, even at 61. She looked after herself, dyed her hair brown, wore clean, ironed clothes. Now she was wearing a blue floral dress that she had made herself. Patricia had worked all her life as a seamstress in the same factory that had now closed. "Amelia," she called out to me. "How are you? Did you see Agustin off?" "Yes, I just came from the train station," I said, coming closer. "What are you doing here?" "I was getting my pension." Patricia showed me the envelope in her hand. "It's late again. They said Friday, but today is Monday. At least they delivered it, or I waited a week last month." We walked down the street toward the center of town. Patricia lived 2 blocks away from me, in a little house she'd inherited from her parents. She had never married, had spent her life working and taking care of her aging parents. Her father was a locksmith, her mother an elementary school teacher. Both died 6 months apart when Patricia was in her 50s. "Did Agustin ask you to come over again?" asked her friend. "He did. He said I had no business being here, He's right about a lot of things," Patricia said, stopping at the window of a small store. "Look at this town. Young people are moving away. There are no jobs. Even the stores are closing one by one. Indeed, the storefront was taped up with an advertisement for rent. Until 6 months ago, they had been selling shoes, inexpensive but good. The owner, Don Rafael, had run the business for 20 years, but in the end, he couldn't compete with the big stores in the neighboring town. But life in Medellin isn't easy either," Patricia continued. "Agustin works as a watchman. He gets a penny. What are you going to do there? Besides, the climate is different, the people are strangers. That's what I think, I agreed. At least here I have my own house, at least some independence. And then, added her friend, at our age, moving is hard. I was thinking after my parents died, maybe in the capital, to my cousin. She called, promised to find a place. But I imagined a strange city, strange people, to start all over again. No, better here among familiar graves. We laughed. Patricia always had a dark humor. What about your Rodrigo? She asked. I haven't seen him for a long time. He's looking for a job, I replied evasively. I didn't want to tell my friend about my son's problems. Patricia wouldn't judge, of course, but she'd feel sorry for him, and I didn't need pity. It's hard for young people now, she sighed. My neighbor's son is an engineer with a degree, but he's been unemployed for 6 months. His wife is working 2 jobs, and he's at home with the kids. We reached the crossroads where our paths diverged. Patricia went left, toward her house, and I went straight ahead, toward Rue Libertad. Come by tonight, she shouted after me. We'll have tea and talk. I still have the cake from Donna Carmen's birthday party. I will, I said. The house greeted me with the usual silence. A small living room, a kitchen, 2 bedrooms. One was mine, the other had once been Rodrigo's nursery and was now a closet. There were old things that I couldn't bear to throw away. My son's childhood toys, a sewing machine I'd once used, boxes of photographs. I went into the kitchen, put the kettle on, and sat down at the table. After 3 days with my brother, the silence pressed especially hard. Agustin, though he wasn't much of a talker, was still a real person to be around. I could talk to him, share my thoughts, just sit in silence but not feel lonely. I took the rest of the chicken I'd cooked for Agustin out of the refrigerator and sliced some bread. I didn't want to eat, but I needed something to occupy my hands, to drown out the intrusive thoughts of loneliness. Outside the window, her neighbor, Doña Maria, was hanging laundry in the yard, humming something to herself. Ordinary life went on. Outside the window, it was beginning to get dark. The July days were long, but by 8 p.m. the sun was already setting behind the roofs of the neighboring houses, painting the sky pinkish-orange. I turned on the TV, but the programs couldn't distract me from my sad thoughts. There was the news, then some show I hadn't seen. The phone rang unexpectedly. The old one that Emilio and I had bought 10 years ago was on the nightstand in the living room. Calls were rare lately, sometimes Agustin, sometimes Patricia, even more rarely someone from the neighbors or the doctor from the clinic. Hello? I said, picking up the phone. Mom, it's me. Rodrigo's voice sounded tired and guilty. How are you? Fine, son. I saw Agustin off, and now I'm home. How are you? Mom, we're in trouble, he said quietly, and I heard someone talking in the background, probably Dolores. We're being kicked out of the house. My heart clenched. I knew my son was struggling financially, but I'd thought he was doing something about it. Being kicked out how? For what? For non-payment. We're 3 months in arrears and the landlord won't wait any longer. He's giving us a week to move out. He says if we don't move out, he'll sue us. I closed my eyes. Rodrigo lost his job at the warehouse 4 months ago and couldn't find a new one. Dolores quit the store, too. She said she was tired of working for pennies. How could they afford the rent? Are you going to look for a new place to live? You can't find a new place without money, Mom. Every place requires a deposit, proof of income, and who will rent to us if we don't have a job? My son's voice became even more pitiful. Mom, can we move in with you? Just for a little while until we get back on our feet. I kept silent, feeling anxiety rising in my chest. Of course, my son, of course I must help. But I knew that for a little while could take months, even years. I knew it wouldn't be easy with Dolores in the same house. I knew that my quiet, measured life would be turned upside down. Mom, can you hear me? Rodrigo asked. I can hear you, son. Sure, come on over. My house is small, but there's room. Thank you, Mom. There was a note of joy in his son's voice. We'll be there tomorrow. Dolores sends her love. I said hello to her, too. Rodrigo, are you going to look for a job? I will, of course. I'm sure I'll find something. Maybe at a construction site, maybe as a loader again. The main thing is to have a roof over my head. All right, just, don't drink. Employers are strict now, they demand sobriety. I understand, Mom. I understand. My voice has become serious. I'll make it up to you, I promise. After I hung up the phone, I sat in the chair for a long time, looking at the darkening window. Everything inside was tight with the anticipation of change. I loved my son, but in recent years our relationship had become strained. His drinking, his irresponsibility, his inability to hold a family together, all of it frustrated and angered me. And Dolores. She always treated me coldly, as if I owed her, never called me Mama, only Donna Amelia, and even then only forcefully. I remembered how she criticized my house when she and Rodrigo came to visit. The furniture was old, the bathroom small, the kitchen uncomfortable. "Why is your TV so old?" she'd say. "And the refrigerator is so small, and the stove is from the dinosaurs." Rodrigo would reprimand her, but I could see that he agreed with her. They wanted more comfort, beautiful things, modern appliances, and I had a modest pension and a house, which I and my husband organized as much as possible. But what could I do? Throw my son out on the street? Refuse to help him in a difficult moment? No, my motherly heart wouldn't let me even think about that. Tomorrow, my quiet life would change, and I didn't yet know if it would be for better or worse. Rodrigo and Dolores arrived the next day around noon in an old cab that barely carried them and their belongings. The driver helped unload 3 large flour sacks and 1 shabby bag, all their possessions. I stood at the gate and watched my son pay the cab driver, counting the crumpled bills. "Hi, Mom," Rodrigo said, hugging me. He'd lost weight in the last few months, his cheeks puffed out, dark circles under his eyes. He smelled faintly of alcohol, even though the day had just begun. "Doña Amelia?" Dolores nodded, not coming closer for a hug. My sister-in-law looked tired and irritated. Her dark hair was disheveled, her cheap blouse wrinkled from the journey. "Thank you for sheltering us." We dragged the bags into the house. Dolores immediately started looking around, and I could see her face growing more and more unhappy. "Where are we going to sleep?" she asked, looking into my bedroom, then into Rodrigo's former nursery. "You can have the nursery," I answered. "I only keep old things there, and I'll clean it up." "It's a very small room," Dolores said unhappily. "And the window faces the wrong way, so in the morning the sun will shine directly into my eyes." Rodrigo was silent, looking at his parents' house. He had not been here for months, and now everything seemed even smaller and poorer than when he was a child. "Where shall we hang our things?" Dolores went on. "The closet in this room is tiny." "We'll hang it up somehow," Rodrigo muttered. "The main thing is that we have a roof over our heads." I started taking boxes of pictures, old dishes, winter clothes out of the nursery. Dolores sat on the couch in the living room and watched me clean. She didn't offer to help. "Doña Amelia, do you have a washing machine?" she asked. "No, I wash by hand," I replied. "There is a trough in the yard." Dolores wrinkled her nose. "And hot water?" "On a schedule. 7 to 9 in the morning and 6 to 8 in the evening." "I see," sighed her sister-in-law. "Well, we'll have to adapt." By evening, I had cleared out the children's room. Rodrigo brought the mattress from the living room where they had slept the first night, and they settled into their new home. At dinner, Dolores criticized my rice. Not enough salt, lots of water. The chicken wasn't to her taste either, tough and bland. "Mama's recipe is different," she said. "She adds special seasonings, and it turns out very tasty." "Cook it yourself as you know how," Rodrigo said tiredly. "Cook on what? On this ancient stove? It doesn't even heat properly." After dinner, his son took out a bottle of cheap rum and drank it straight from the neck. Dolores refused at first, but then she asked him to pour it into a glass. "Rodrigo, maybe we shouldn't," I said cautiously. "Tomorrow you'll be looking for a job." "Mom, don't tell me how to live," my son snapped at me. "I'm a grown man. I know what to do." I kept silent and went to my room. Through the thin wall, I could hear their drunken mumbling, then music from the cheap radio they had brought with them. The next morning, Dolores got up before anyone else and began to remodel the living room. When I went into the kitchen, I found that the sofa was in a different place, the table had been moved to the window, and my favorite chair, where I used to sit in the evenings, was in the corner. "What are you doing?" I asked. Making it more comfortable, Dolores said, wiping the sweat from her forehead. There's more room and the light falls better. But I was comfortable the way it was. Doña Emilia, there are 3 of us here now. We have to think of all of us. Rodrigo was asleep at the time, and my daughter-in-law wouldn't let me wake him. Let him sleep, she said. A man needs rest. By lunchtime, her son woke up with a heavy head. Dolores made him strong coffee and made him eat scrambled eggs. Go look for a job, she said. There's no money left at all. Rodrigo reluctantly packed up and left. He came back in the evening drunk and angry. Everywhere requires certificates, he mumbled. Everywhere you need experience. Where to get it, if no one takes it? Do you go to job interviews drunk? Dolores asked. Not drunk. I just had a beer to build up my courage. This argument was repeated every day. Rodrigo would go out in the morning to look for a job and come back drunk and without results. Dolores would get angry, make scandals, and then get drunk too. My house became a place of constant conflict. After a week, Dolores announced that she was going to cook for herself. Your food is not good for us, she told me. Too bland, too unpalatable. She took over the kitchen, laid out her spices and seasonings, and began cooking spicy dishes that made my eyes water. She pushed my dishes to the far corner, put hers in a prominent place. Where do you want me to cook? I asked. When I'm done, then you can cook, my daughter-in-law replied. But she cooked for a long time, occupying the kitchen for several hours. I had to wait for her to vacate the stove or eat what she cooked. The food was really spicy. I wasn't used to such spices. Rodrigo, meanwhile, was drinking more and more. Now he started in the morning, ostensibly for courage before looking for work. By lunchtime he was drunk, and by evening he could hardly stand on his feet. Dolores sometimes kept him company, especially when she was upset about the lack of money. It was better at home, she complained, sipping rum from a glass. Bigger house, nicer furniture, nicer neighbors. Then why did you move here? I couldn't stand it one day. Where were we supposed to go? Dolores snapped at me. We were out of money, out of work. My peace was completely gone. The house was no longer a quiet sanctuary. Now there were voices, music, doors slamming. Rodrigo and Dolores went to bed well past midnight, talking loudly, laughing or arguing. In the morning, the daughter-in-law would occupy the bathroom for an hour, using all the hot water. Dolores, save some hot water for me too, I asked one day. I'm not fast, she replied. I need to wash my hair, clean my face. You can also wash with cold water. At your age, it is even useful. I put up with it. I told myself that it was only temporary, that my son would soon find a job. They would rent a place and move out. But as the days went by, Rodrigo drank more and drank less and looked for work. Now he didn't even pretend to go out looking for work. He sat at home, listening to music, drinking cheap alcohol. Neighbors started complaining. Don Osvaldo, an elderly retired teacher who lived next door, asked several times for the music to be turned down. His wife, Doña Estela, a former nurse, also voiced her displeasure. Emilia, she said to me over the fence, we understand your difficulties, but at night the music makes it hard to sleep. I'll talk to them, I promised. But talking didn't help. Rodrigo snapped at me. Dolores said she had a right to rest. The music kept blaring at night. The tipping point came on Saturday night. Rodrigo got particularly drunk. Apparently, he had gotten some money and spent it on alcohol. He turned up the radio to full volume, opened the windows wide open. Some kind of dance music with a harsh bass line was playing. Don Osvaldo arrived around 11 o'clock at night. He knocked on the door politely but insistently. I opened the door. My neighbor was in his 70s, looking tired and upset. Emilia, please, he said. My wife is sick. She needs to rest. We can't sleep because of this noise. I called Rodrigo, but he only laughed. It's not good for old people to sleep early, he shouted from the room. Let them dance. Rodrigo, turn down the music, I asked. I will not. I do what I want in my own house. Don Osvaldo tried to talk to his son himself. He went into the living room, politely explained the situation. Rodrigo got up from the couch, staggered. And who are you to tell me what to do? He said drunkenly. I can do what I want in my own house. Young man, I'm just asking you to respect your neighbors. Neighbors, Rodrigo interrupted. Do you respect me? You've been turning your nose up all day as if I owed you something. The conversation quickly turned into a quarrel. Rodrigo shouted, waving his arms, accusing Don Osvaldo of every mortal sin. The elderly teacher tried to remain calm, but he too began to raise his voice. And then Rodrigo pushed his neighbor, hard, roughly, so that he staggered and almost fell. Don Osvaldo was a frail old man. A push like that could seriously injure him. "Rodrigo!" I shouted. But my son was already furious. He grabbed Don Osvaldo by his shirt and began to shake him, shouting insults. The elderly man tried to break free, but his strength was unequal. Donna Estela came running to the screams. When she saw my drunken son hurting her husband, she started crying and calling for help. Dolores looked out of the kitchen but did not interfere, only watched curiously. I rushed to separate them, but Rodrigo pushed me too in a drunken frenzy. I fell to the sofa, my shoulder hitting the armrest. Don Osvaldo took advantage of the moment and got out of the house. Doña Estela helped him to the gate. Both were in shock, the older woman sobbing. "Amelia," said Don Osvaldo, holding on to his heart. "We can't go on living like this. If it happens again, we'll have to go to the police." They went to their house, and I was left with a drunken son and an indifferent daughter-in-law. Rodrigo kept muttering something about the insolent neighbors, and the music was still blaring. Dolores went to bed saying only, "Why are you yelling at him? A man has a right to rest after a hard day." I sat in my recliner and realized that my life was finally out of control. The house that had been my sanctuary had become a place of chaos and pain. The son I had raised and loved had become a stranger and a frightening person, and ahead of me were more days of the same life. After the fight with the neighbors, there was a week of tense silence. Don Osvaldo and Doña Estela no longer greeted me over the fence, only nodded coldly and averted their eyes. I understood their condition. At their age, such shocks could seriously undermine their health. I was ashamed of my son's behavior, but I did not dare to apologize. What could I say? That my 34-year-old son was behaving like an unruly teenager? Rodrigo, meanwhile, was drinking more and more. Now he didn't get out of bed until lunchtime, and when he woke up, he went straight to the bottle. Dolores was angry with her husband, but more because of the money than because of his condition. The money was running out fast. Almost all of it was spent on alcohol. "Where are we going to get money for food?" she shouted at Rodrigo. "Do you think your mother will feed us forever?" But she didn't make much effort to find a job herself. She stayed at home all day, reading old magazines she found in my boxes or listening to the radio. Sometimes she would go out into the yard, stand by the fence, and talk to passing neighbors, complaining about life. "We're here temporarily," she told them. "We'll find something better soon. Rodrigo is sure to settle down. He has golden hands." The neighbors listened politely, but I saw in their eyes sympathy not for Dolores but for me. The whole neighborhood knew what was going on in my house. They heard the night music, saw Rodrigo staggering around the yard drunk, noticed how my life had changed. Doña Carmen, who lived across the street, came up to me one day outside the store. "Amelia, my dear," she said quietly, "how can you stand it? Maybe you should have a serious talk with your son." "I've already talked to him," I replied tiredly. "He doesn't listen. He says it's only temporary." "What about your daughter-in-law?" "What about my daughter-in-law? She thinks I should help them." Doña Carmen shook her head and said nothing more, but I could see the pity in her eyes, and it made me feel even worse. At home, the situation was getting worse every day. Dolores had finally taken over the kitchen, cooking only for herself and her husband. I got what was left over, or had to cook it myself when she cleared the stove. "We buy groceries with our own money," she explained to me. "It makes sense that we cook for ourselves. With what money they used to buy food was a mystery. They had no income except for the small sums I sometimes gave them. Apparently, Dolores saved money on everything, bought the cheapest things and in the smallest quantities. My room, too, my sister-in-law began to criticize. "Doña Amelia," she said one day, looking into my bedroom, "could you move into the living room? Rodrigo and I need more space, and your bed would fit perfectly there." "This is my room," I answered. "I've slept here for 27 years. Well, yes, but now circumstances have changed. There are 3 of us now, and we have to think about everyone's comfort. No, I said firmly. I will not sleep in the living room. Dolores took offense and didn't speak to me for days. Rodrigo did not interfere in these disputes. He was too drunk to understand what was going on. It was especially hard for me in the evenings. It used to be my time to sit in an armchair, read or watch TV, and enjoy the silence. Now the living room was occupied by Dolores and Rodrigo. They played music, talked loudly, sometimes quarreled. They watched only what they liked on TV, some soap operas or music programs. "Doña Amelia," Dolores said when I tried to change the channel, "we're already watching that program." I had to go to my room and lie in bed, listening to their voices through the thin wall. On Thursday morning, 3 weeks into their stay at my house, Dolores announced the news that made my chest grow cold. "Doña Amelia," she said as she put rice for breakfast, "I spoke to my mother on the phone yesterday. They're in trouble. They're being kicked out of their house, too." I looked at my sister-in-law warily. I didn't expect anything good from this conversation. "They're being kicked out?" I asked again. "Yes, the owner is selling the house, and the new owners want to live there themselves. They're giving them a month to move out." Dolores paused for a moment, gathering her courage. "My parents helped me a lot when I was little. My mom always said family should support each other." My heart sank. I realized where this conversation was going. "What are they going to do?" I asked cautiously. I was thinking that maybe they would move here, for a while, of course, until they find something suitable. Dolores spoke quickly, without looking me in the eye. "Dad could help Rodrigo find a job. He has connections, people he knows." I felt the blood drain from my face. 2 more people in my little house? Where would they sleep? What will they eat? How am I going to handle this many people? "Dolores," I said, trying to speak calmly, "my house is small. There are already 3 of us, and 2 more won't fit." "It will fit," my sister-in-law said confidently. "My parents are unpretentious people. They can sleep on the sofa and on the floor. The main thing is a roof over their heads. And where will they cook? The kitchen is already busy from morning till night. Mom can cook quickly. 1 pot and there's enough for everyone. It's more economical." I realized Dolores had already made up her mind. She wasn't asking my permission. She was just putting me on the spot. "No," I said. "I'm sorry, but no. I can't take 2 more people. The house is too small." Dolores's face darkened. "So my parents have to live on the street?" She raised her voice. "So old people have to wander around without a roof over their heads? Let them look for another place to live. Rent a room somewhere." "With what? Their pensions are pennies. They don't have jobs." "My pension is small, too," I replied. "I can barely feed you 2. Dolores got up from the table, knocking over a chair. "Oh, that's it!" she shouted. "So we are a burden to you. So you feed us out of mercy." I did not say that. "What did you say? That there's no money, that there's no room. Where's your motherly love? Where's your concern for your family?" I tried to explain that I love my son, but I can't physically accommodate 5 people in the house. Dolores wouldn't listen to me. She shouted, waved her hands, accused me of greed and selfishness. "Parents spend all their lives on their children, and when they grow old, the children throw them out like dogs," she yelled. "The house is big, there are enough rooms, and you are stingy." "What big house?" I couldn't stand it. "You said yourself that it's small. For us small, but for my parents and not so will do." At that moment a strange sound came from the garden, something between a snore and a groan. Dolores and I looked out of the window. Rodrigo was lying on the ground between the tomato beds with his arms and legs spread out. He was dressed only in shorts and a t-shirt, with an empty bottle lying next to him. Apparently, he had gone to the bathroom the night before, got even more drunk, and just collapsed where he stood. "There's your precious son," Dolores said angrily. "He's lying like a pig in the mud, and you're taking care of him." I ran into the yard. Rodrigo was unconscious, but he was breathing normally. There was mud all over his clothes and leaves stuck in his hair. He smelled strongly of alcohol and urine. "Rodrigo!" I called out. "Son, wake up!" He moved, mumbled something unintelligible, but didn't open his eyes. "Get up! You can't lie here! You'll catch cold!" Dolores stood on the threshold and looked at the scene with disgust. It's the same every night, she said. He gets drunk and falls over, and you feel sorry for him. I tried to lift my son, but he was too heavy. I had to carry him under my arms to the house. Dolores didn't help, just watched. And for the sake of this alcoholic, you refuse to help my parents? She continued. For this drunkard who can't even go to the toilet? That's my son, I said, gasping for breath. A good son, just exemplary. His mother didn't spend the night in the house, and now he's lying in the vegetable garden. We dragged Rodrigo home and put him on the couch. He immediately snored, spreading out to his full height. Now he'll sleep until evening, Dolores said angrily, and I have to look at him all day long. If you don't like it, you can leave, I said. Leave? Dolores's voice became dangerously quiet. Do you want us to leave? I want you not to yell in my house and demand the impossible. Oh, so! Dolores shrieked. Then we're superfluous here. Then you can't stand us. She rushed to the telephone and began to dial. Mommy, it's me, she said into the receiver. Yes, everything is bad. My mother-in-law is kicking us out. She says there's no room, she says there's no money. Yeah, right now she said, get out. I tried to object, but Dolores wouldn't let me speak. What do we do? I don't know. Maybe we'll come to your place until we find an apartment. Pause. I see. Okay, we'll figure something out. She hung up the phone and turned to me with a furious face. Happy now? She hissed. My parents say they're getting kicked out tomorrow. Tomorrow. And we're superfluous here too. Dolores, I didn't say you're superfluous. You didn't? Then what did you say? That there's no room, that there's no money. So we're a burden. I just explained that I can't take 2 more people. You can't! Dolores interrupted me. A rich madam can't. She has a small pension. She grabbed a plate from the table and threw it on the floor. The plate shattered. That's what I think of your help, she shouted. That's what I think of your kindness. Then she rushed into her room and started pulling things out of bags. What are you doing? I asked. Packing, Dolores growled, shoving the clothes into the bag. If we're not here, we're leaving. Where are you going? None of your business. We'll find a place to sleep. She woke Rodrigo and forced him to get up. Get up! She shook her husband by the shoulders. Mother's kicking us out. Pack your things. Rodrigo blinked sleepily, not understanding what was happening. Mother is kicking us out? He mumbled. Why? Because she's fed up with us. Because she's greedy. Mom, is it true? My son asked, turning to me. I wanted to explain the situation, but Dolores wouldn't let me say a word. It's true, she shouted. She said, get out, there's no room. She refused to accept my parents. Rodrigo got up from the couch. Okay, Mom, he said quietly. If you don't want to see us, we'll leave. Son, I didn't say... Stop lying! Dolores exploded. Stop making excuses. We already know what you think of us. She ran out into the yard and started throwing my things on the ground. My clothes, my books, my pictures, everything went into the dirt. What are you doing? I screamed. These are my things. Not yours now, Dolores growled. Nothing is yours now. The house is not yours. The things are not yours. She came into my bedroom and started throwing clothes out of the closet. Stop it! I tried to stop her, but Dolores pushed me so hard that I fell on the bed. Don't touch me! She shrieked. I'm the boss of this place now. Do you understand? Rodrigo stood in the doorway and watched the scene with absent eyes. He was too drunk to realize what was going on. Dolores, stop, he muttered. Why are you doing this? Because your mommy kicked us out, screamed the wife. Because she doesn't want us. She kept throwing my stuff into the yard. The neighbors were leaning out of their windows watching this madness. I was ashamed and scared. Dolores, please. No, please, she interrupted me. Get out of here. This is our house now. What's yours? It's my house. It was yours, and now it's ours. Rodrigo is registered here. He has the right to live here. I realized it was useless to argue with her. Dolores was in a state of passion. She couldn't hear any reason. I left the house after gathering the most necessary things. Rodrigo was standing at the gate, looking away. Son, I approached him. Do you realize what's happening? He slowly turned his head and looked at me with cloudy eyes. Mom, he said quietly, I don't feel well. My head hurts. "Rodrigo, this is my house. I didn't kick anyone out." "I don't know, Mom," he mumbled. "Dolores says you don't want to see us. I suppose I don't." He turned and went back into the house. I stood at the gate with my bag in my hands, not sure what to do next. My things, dresses, underwear, books, photographs, were lying in the yard. It was all trampled, covered in mud. Dolores looked out of the window and shouted, "Don't think of coming back! You don't belong here anymore!" I took my bag and walked down the street, not knowing where to go. The neighbors looked at me with pity, but no one dared to approach me. Everyone saw the scandal. Everyone understood what was going on, but no one wanted to interfere in family affairs. It was only when I reached Patricia's house that I realized I was crying. Tears were running down my cheeks, and I didn't even notice them. I knocked on the door with trembling hands. "Amelia!" Patricia opened the door and gasped when she saw my condition. "What's wrong?" "Patricia," I whispered. "I was kicked out of the house." Patricia led me into the living room and sat me in a chair without asking any questions. She brought me a glass of water and gave me a clean towel to wipe my face. Only when I calmed down a little, my friend asked gently, "What happened, Amelia? Why are you crying?" I told her everything, from Dolores's demand for her parents to the scene with the thrown things in the yard. Patricia listened in silence, only occasionally shaking her head or clucking her tongue. "And Rodrigo didn't say anything?" she asked when I finished my story. "He was too drunk. He didn't even know what was going on." "Amelia, darling." Patricia sat down beside me and took my hand. "Of course you can stay with me. As long as you need, as long as you live." It was quiet and cozy in her friend's house, a small living room with neat furniture, which Patricia kept in perfect order. On the walls hung pictures of her parents. On the table were needlework, embroidery, which she practiced in the evenings. It smelled of lavender and cleanliness, and no one shouted or made a scene. "I'll make your bed on the couch," Patricia said. "Tomorrow we'll go and get your things, get what's left intact." But the next day, when we got to my house, there was no one in the yard. My things were gone. Dolores must have thrown them away or burned them. The gate was locked with a padlock that hadn't been there before. "You see," said Patricia, "they're already feeling like masters. We could only see part of the yard through the fence. The laundry on the rope was clearly not mine. Some unfamiliar rags and oversized men's shirts." "Who could it be?" I asked. "Your sister-in-law's parents must have arrived by now," suggested her friend. We didn't knock on the door and went on our way. On the way, we met Doña Carmen, the very neighbor who had earlier sympathetically asked me about family problems. "Amelia," she called us. "How are you? I heard you were in trouble." "Yes, I had to leave home," I replied briefly. "I saw a car pull up to your house yesterday," said Doña Carmen. "They brought some elderly people with their belongings, a man and a woman in their 50s, so Dolores really did move her parents into my house. So now there are 5 people living there in 2 small rooms. Where they all fit was a mystery." "Had you seen Rodrigo?" I asked. "Your son?" "Yes, of course. He was helping them carry their things, but he was staggering around drunk." "And he didn't say anything? He didn't ask about his mother?" Doña Carmen was silent for a moment, obviously not knowing how to answer this painful question. "Amelia," she said at last, "I don't want to upset you, but your son looked indifferent, as if nothing much was going on. Those words hurt my heart. So Rodrigo really didn't protest his mother's banishment. What's more, he was helping my wife's parents settle into my house. That evening, as Patricia and I drank tea in her kitchen, I couldn't think of anything else." "He didn't even call," I said. "Didn't even ask where I was, how I was doing." "Amelia," my friend said gently, "maybe you should make a hard decision. Your son has changed. He's no longer the boy you raised." "What do you mean?" "Maybe it's no longer worth waiting for things to work out. Maybe it's time to take action." I didn't immediately understand what Patricia was saying. Then I realized, "Do you think I should what? Go to the police?" "No, not the police. But you own the house, you have rights. You can exercise those rights." We talked a lot that night. Patricia told stories of neighbors who'd been in similar situations, how Donna Mercedes had kicked out a bad son-in-law who drank the money and beat her daughter, how Don Carlos sold the house and moved in with his sister when he realized his son would never reform. "At our age, Amelia," her friend said, "you have to think of yourself. You don't have many years left to waste on people who don't appreciate you." The next day, we passed my house again. This time, there was some activity visible in the yard. Voices could be heard, laughter, the sounds of cooking. There was smoke coming from the chimney. They were heating the stove, even though it was hot outside. "A lot of people," Patricia said. "It must be all 5 of them." "2 rooms," I said bitterly. "How do they fit?" "I guess they don't care. The main thing is that it's free." We reached the central square, where there were a few stores and a small local government building. Next door, in an old colonial mansion, was a real estate agency. I'd walked past it many times, but I'd never gone inside. "Amelia," Patricia said, stopping at the entrance, "what about coming in here?" "Why?" "To see how much your house is worth. Just out of curiosity." I looked at the sign. Quintero and Associates, real estate, appraisals, transactions. Simple words, but they made my heart tingle. "Patricia, I'm not ready." "We'll just find out the price," my friend insisted. "No strings attached." We went inside. In the reception area sat a young girl, a secretary. She politely asked what we had come for. "We'd like to know the value of the house," Patricia said. "For appraisal or for sale?" the girl asked. "For now, for appraisal," I answered. We were ushered into the realtor's office. Leonardo Quintero was a man about 42 years old, neatly dressed with attentive eyes. On his desk were folders with documents. On the wall hung pictures of houses and plots. "So you want to know the value of the property?" he asked, motioning for us to sit down. "Where is the house?" I gave him the address. Leonardo nodded. "I know the neighborhood. Quiet place, good infrastructure. How big is the house?" I described my house: 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a small yard. Leonardo made notes in his notebook. "What's the condition?" "It's livable. It hasn't been renovated in a while, but everything works." "Got it." The realtor opened a folder and flipped through some papers. "In your neighborhood, similar houses sell for between 8 and 12 million pesos, depending on the condition and exact location." I was surprised. I didn't think my humble little house was worth that much money. "What if it's an emergency sale?" Patricia suddenly asked. "Urgent?" Leonardo looked at us carefully. "Well, in a rush sale, the price is reduced by about 20%, but it's a quick transaction." "How fast?" I asked, surprised by my own words. "If the house is in good condition and the price is adequate, then in a week or 2. I have several clients who are looking for homes in your neighborhood." Patricia and I looked at each other. My friend nodded encouragingly. "What documents do you need for the sale?" I asked. Leonardo explained the whole procedure: a certificate of ownership, a certificate of no debts, a passport. I had it all. "If you decide to sell, come with the documents," said the realtor. "We'll make a quick appraisal and put it up for sale." We left the agency in thought. Patricia was silent, giving me time to digest the information. 8 million, I finally said. "Even if we sold it right away, it would be more than 6. "That's good money," I agreed. "You could buy a small apartment in Medellin with it, or live modestly but without poverty." "What about Rodrigo? How can I sell the house where my son lives?" "Amelia," Patricia stopped and looked me in the eye. "What kind of son is he to you? He kicked you out of the house. He let strangers run your house." We reached Patricia's house and sat on the veranda. My friend made coffee and we sat in silence for a long time, each of us thinking about our own things. "What if he comes to his senses?" I asked. "What if he realizes what he's done and wants to make things right? How long can we wait?" Patricia sighed. "You're already 59 years old. How much time have you wasted trying to save him?" That evening, I lay on the couch in Patricia's living room and thought about my life. How I'd raised Rodrigo after my husband's death. How I'd hoped he'd be a support in his old age. About how it had all gone wrong. In the morning, I was awakened by a phone call. Patricia was talking to someone in the kitchen, and her voice was agitated. "What's wrong?" I asked when she hung up. Donna Carmen called. She said there was a drunken brawl at your house last night. The neighbors complained that it was very noisy. A fight? Uh-huh. Your Rodrigo and your father-in-law were fighting about something. They were yelling, breaking dishes. Then the police came. The police? Neighbors called them. They were tired of the noise. The cops talked to them, warned them that next time they'd be fined. I imagined this picture. My quiet house turned into a place of drunken scandals. My neighbors, who now have to endure this nightmare or call the police. That's it, I said firmly. That's enough. Enough of what? I'm going to the realtor. I'm selling the house. Patricia looked at me in surprise. Are you sure? Yes, enough. Let Rodrigo sort out his own life. We had breakfast and went to the agency. Leonardo Quintero was surprised to see us again so soon. Have you decided to sell? He asked. Yes, I answered firmly. As soon as possible. Good. What documents did you bring? I took out the property certificate, my passport, and a certificate that I had no debts. The realtor scrutinized the papers. Everything is in order, he said. The house is registered to you, no debts. We can register for sale. And how long will it take? With any luck, very quickly. I have a client, a mechanic, looking for a house in your neighborhood. He's willing to pay cash, no credit. Can I meet him? Sure. I'll give you a call. Leonardo dialed a number and spoke briefly to someone. Damien can be here in an hour, he said. Would you like to wait? We agreed. The realtor bought us coffee and told us how real estate transactions work. It turned out that if the buyer pays cash, it takes only a few days to process. Damien Hernandez arrived exactly 1 hour later. He was a man of about 38, in work clothes with the tanned hands of a mechanic. He didn't talk much, but he was to the point. I want to buy a house for my family, he explained. I have a wife and 2 children. We've been renting an apartment for 5 years. We're tired of throwing money into the wind. And what attracts you to this neighborhood? I asked. It's quiet there. It's safe for children to play in the yard. And my workshop is not far away. Leonardo showed him the pictures of the house that he had taken the day before. Damien scrutinized the pictures. Can I see the house from the inside? He asked. Of course, answered the realtor. When is convenient? Right now. I felt my heart beat faster. Now we'll go to my house where Rodrigo and Dolores's family live. How would they react to a buyer? Does anyone live there now? Damien asked, as if he'd read my mind. Yes, I answered. My son and his family, temporarily. I see. Did they know the house was for sale? I hesitated, not knowing what to say. They'll know soon enough, Patricia intervened. Damien nodded. I guess he wasn't surprised by the family problems. He'd seen a lot of things at his age. All right, he said. Let's go look. We got in the realtor's car and drove to my house. On the way, I thought about the fact that in a few minutes I would see Rodrigo for the first time since the scandal. What would he say? How would he feel about the news of the sale? When we pulled up to the house, there was no one in the yard, just laundry on a rope and a few empty bottles under a tree. There's the house, Leonardo said, stopping the car at the gate. When we got to the gate, I saw that the lock was still hanging on it. But it was my house, and I had the keys. With trembling hands, I opened the lock and let Leonardo and Damien into the yard. Immediately, it was striking how my neat yard had changed. Empty bottles, food scraps, and cigarette butts were everywhere. Laundry was hanging not only on the rope, but also on the fence and on the bushes. In the corner of the yard stood a large pot with some slop. The smell was unpleasant, a mixture of unwashed bodies, alcohol, and rotting waste. My tomatoes were trampled, my flowers withered from lack of watering. It's not very clean, Damien said, glancing around the yard. It's usually tidy, I said, embarrassed. It's a temporary condition. We went to the door. There were voices coming from inside, loud conversations in high-pitched tones. Some were cursing, some were laughing. There was music from an old radio and the sounds of cooking, the sizzling of oil in a pan. I knocked on the door. Who's there? A woman's voice called out from inside. It's me, Amelia, I answered. The door was opened by a woman of about 54, whom I had never seen before. It was Dolores's mother, Carmen Montero. She was fat, with disheveled hair, wearing a laundered robe. She smelled of onions and something sour. She had traces of flour on her hands. Apparently she'd been cooking. "Who are you?" she asked suspiciously, looking at Leonardo and Damien. "I'm the lady of the house," I said. "And these are the customers." "What customers?" Carmen was confused. "Dolores!" she shouted into the back of the house. "Come here! There are people here!" My sister-in-law came running out of the kitchen. She looked even worse than usual, her hair messy, her face angry. She was wearing my old dress, which I hadn't seen in years. She must have found it in the closet and appropriated it. "What do you want here?" she asked me aggressively. "Dolores, I sold the house," I said as calmly as I could. "These people are the new owners." "What?" Dolores went pale. "What owners? What kind of nonsense?" "No nonsense. The house has been sold. Here are the documents." Leonardo took out a folder of papers and handed it to Dolores. She grabbed the papers and began flipping through them frantically, though she could hardly understand anything about them. Her hands shook, her lips moved. She tried to read something, but the letters seemed to blur before her eyes. "It's a fake!" she screamed at last. "You can't sell the house! We live here!" "The house is mine, and I have the right to sell it," I replied. "And us? And Rodrigo? Where are we going to live?" "That's your problem." There was a rumble from the living room. Someone had fallen or dropped something. Then a man's voice mumbled something unintelligible, and there was the sound of breaking glass. "Rodrigo, come here!" Dolores shouted. "Your mother has sold the house!" A moment later, my son crawled out of the living room. He was dressed in a dirty t-shirt and shorts, his hair sticking out in all directions, his eyes red and cloudy. He was holding onto the wall so he wouldn't fall. All he had on his feet were socks, one torn. His face was swollen, unshaven for days. "Mom," he mumbled, barely able to focus his eyes on me. "What are you doing here?" "I brought the new owners of the house," I answered. "What new owners?" Rodrigo tried to straighten, but he swayed. "This is our house." "It's not yours anymore," Leonardo said, showing me the papers. "The house was sold legally. Here is the contract of sale. Here are the certificates." Rodrigo took the papers with shaking hands and tried to read something, but in his condition it was impossible. He ran his finger along the lines, moved his lips, but he could not understand the text. "Mom," he finally said, handing the papers back, "you can't kick us out. We're family." "You kicked me out yourself," I replied. "Remember? Your wife threw my stuff out in the yard." "It was—" Rodrigo was silent, apparently trying to remember. "It was a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Dolores intervened. "You threw us out. You said there was no room." "I said I couldn't take 2 more people," I said. "And you kicked me out of the house." Another man I didn't recognize came out of the bedroom, Dolores's father, Eusebio Montero. He was a thin man with an unshaven face, wearing a crumpled shirt. He stood silently next to his wife and daughter, but did not say a word. He only looked at what was going on with his small, cunning eyes. "Listen," intervened Damien, who had been watching silently. "I need to look around the house. Can I go inside?" "You can't!" Dolores shouted. "Our things are here." "The house is no longer yours," said the buyer calmly. "The deal is done." "What deal? We didn't sign anything." "You don't have to sign anything," Leonardo explained. "The house belonged to Donna Emilia, and she sold it." Damien went into the living room, despite Dolores's protests. We followed him. The sight inside the house was horrifying. Furniture was displaced, things strewn everywhere, empty bottles and leftovers on the floor. The couch, where I used to read in the evenings, was now covered with dirty rags and someone else's unwashed clothes. My favorite chair was drenched in something brown, probably beer or coffee. There were smoke stains on the walls and cigarette butts on the floor. "It's a pigsty in here," Damien said, looking around. "It's only temporary," Dolores shouted. "We'll clean it up." "You'll get out of here," replied the buyer coldly. "Right now. We're not going anywhere." Dolores stood in the middle of the living room, spreading her arms. "This is our home. We live here." Do you have the deeds to this house? Leonardo asked. Why do we need papers? Rodrigo is registered here. He is the son of the owner. Registration doesn't give you ownership rights, the realtor explained. The house belonged to his mother. She sold it. Without our consent. Your consent is not required. Rodrigo sank down on the sofa and covered his face with his hands. His shoulders were shaking, whether from the cold or from nervous tension. Mother, he muttered, why are you doing this? We'll make a deal somehow. Agree on what? I asked. You kicked me out of the house, put strangers here, turned the house into a dump. I didn't kick you out. You didn't protest when your wife kicked me out. You didn't even ask where I was going to live. I don't remember. Rodrigo rubbed his forehead, trying to focus. I had a headache. You've had a headache for months. From the vodka. Enough! Dolores exploded. Stop blaming my husband! He's a good man, he's just got problems. His problems are not my problems, I said. I've lived with them for 34 years. Damien, meanwhile, was looking around the kitchen and the bedrooms. In the kitchen, there were dirty pots on the stove, and the sink was full of leftovers. The bedroom that had once been Rodrigo's nursery was now occupied by Dolores's parents. Their belongings were strewn everywhere. The bed hadn't been made in days. Rodrigo and Dolores slept in my former bedroom, which was also a mess. How long will it take them to clear the house? He asked Leonardo. By law, 3 days, the realtor replied. 3 days? Dolores gasped. We can't find a place to live in 3 days. That's your problem, Damien repeated. I'm buying a house, not renting. We're not leaving. Dolores stood in the doorway, blocking the way. Throw us out by force. Eusebio and Carmen silently supported their daughter, standing beside her. Rodrigo rose from the sofa, staggering. Yes, he said with sudden firmness. We are not leaving here. This is my father's house, my childhood home. The house was mine, I objected. It belongs to Don Damien now. It belongs to no one, screamed my son. You had no right to sell it. Yes, I did. I have all the papers. And I have my son's rights. What rights? The right to turn the house into a brothel? Rodrigo took a few hesitant steps toward me. There was something menacing in his eyes, his face contorted with anger. Mom, cancel the deal, he said quietly but threateningly. Before it's too late. It was too late 2 days ago, I replied, when you let your wife kick me out. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking. You're always drunk. You've been drunk for 6 months. Enough! Rodrigo shouted and swung at me. Damien quickly stepped between us, grabbing my son's arm. Hey, kid, he said calmly. Keep your hands to yourself. Who are you to tell me what to do? Rodrigo snapped at him, trying to get away. I own this house. I won't have any fights here. What kind of master are you? Rodrigo tried to push Damien away, but he was much stronger and soberer. Leonardo, Damien turned to the realtor, call the police. Let them handle this. No, Dolores screamed. No police. But Leonardo was already dialing a number on his cell phone. Hello, police? Need some help. We have a problem with a home invasion. While we waited for the police, the atmosphere in the house was heating up. Dolores was pacing the rooms, mumbling to herself. Her parents were sitting in the kitchen discussing the situation in whispers. Rodrigo sank down on the sofa and stared stupidly at the wall. Mom, he said suddenly, do you remember how Dad and I used to clean the fish here? On this very table? I remembered. Emilio used to bring back some roach or perch from the river, and he and my son would sit in the kitchen and spend a long time cleaning them. Rodrigo was 10 years old at the time, and he was eager to help his father. I remember, I said. And how did we make a swing in the yard? Dad tied a rope to a tree, and I swung until the evening. I remember that too. How can you sell this house? There were tears in Rodrigo's voice. Our whole life is here. Our life ended when your father died, I said. And what happened after that was not a life. But I'll get better. I'll get a job. I'll quit drinking. How many times have you said that? It's true now. You said it a month ago and 2 months ago. The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 young officers, one older, experienced, the other very young, apparently fresh out of the academy. They listened to the explanations of all parties, scrutinized the documents. Everything is clear, said the older of them. "The house has been legally sold. The new owners have all the rights." "And we have no rights?" Dolores asked. "You have the right to find another place to live," said the policeman, "within 3 days." "And if we don't?" "You will, if you want to." "And if we don't?" "Then you'll be forcibly evicted, and you'll get a fine for trespassing." "What fine?" Dolores was frightened. "A big one," the officer replied briefly. "A very big one." Rodrigo listened to the conversation, swaying in his seat. Then suddenly he sat down on the floor and cried. "Mother," he whimpered. "How could you? How could you sell the house?" "Very simply," I answered. "I went to a realtor and sold it." "But it's Dad's house. It's our family's house." "Your dad's dead. There's no family anymore." "Yes, there is. We're family." "No," I said firmly. "A family doesn't throw a mother out on the street." "I didn't." Dolores did. "You didn't protect me. You didn't say anything." "I was drunk." "Exactly. You're always drunk when you're required to do something." The cops wrote up a report that the tenants had been notified to vacate the house, gave them 3 days to pack up. "If you're here in 3 days," the senior officer warned, "we'll be back with a warrant for forced eviction." "And there will be a fine," added the younger one, "not a small one." "Where are we supposed to go?" Carmen asked pitifully. "We have no money, no jobs." "That's not our problem," replied the policeman. "Look for relatives, friends, rent a room." "Rent a room on what?" "On welfare, on part-time jobs. People live somehow." There was a heavy silence in the house after the police left. Dolores and her parents looked at each other with confused looks. Rodrigo sat on the floor and sobbed quietly. "Well," Damien said, "can I look around the house in peace now?" No one answered him. He walked through the rooms, looked in the pantry, checked the plumbing, knocked on the walls, looked at the ceiling. "It's not a bad house," he said to Leonardo. "Under repair, of course, but strong. The foundation is good. The roof does not leak. When do we sign the contract?" "Tomorrow morning," said the realtor. "The documents are ready." "And when to transfer the money?" "Right after the signing. Doña Emilia wants cash." "No problem. I have the whole amount." We were about to leave. On the doorstep, I turned to my son. "Rodrigo," I said, "you can get a job, rent a place, start a normal life. It's not too late." He looked up at me, his eyes red with tears. "Mom, I can't do this without you," he whispered. "Don't leave me." "You left me," I said. "I'll make it up to you. I'll stop drinking. I'll get a job. How many times have you said that? Now it's for real. It's too late, son. It's too late. Mom, I'm sorry." Rodrigo tried to get up, but fell back to his knees. "I won't do it again. My word of honor." "Your word of honor can no longer be trusted. Give me another chance." "I've been giving you chances for a year. You drank them away." I walked out of the house and never looked back. I heard Dolores screaming, Rodrigo crying, and her parents whispering in confusion. The next day I signed the papers and received the money for the house. Damien paid in cash, as promised. Leonardo took his percentage, and I had enough money to live modestly for a few years. "What do you plan to do next?" the realtor asked, handing me the envelope with the money. "I'm going to my brother in Medellin," I answered. "I will live with him." "Good decision," Leonardo approved. "There are more opportunities in a big city." Patricia helped me pack the most necessary things and escorted me to the bus to the train station. We drove in silence, both of us realizing that this was not just a move, but the end of a whole period of life. "You're doing the right thing," she said as we stood on the platform. "Agustin is a good man. It will be easier for you together." "Thank you for everything," I said. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made up my mind." "I would have." Just a little later. Patricia hugged me. "Write sometime. Tell me how you're settling in." "I will." The train to Medellin left at 3 in the afternoon. I sat in the car at the window and looked at the passing scenery. Towards a new life, towards my brother who always supported me. I had a one-way ticket in my pocket. I had no way back. As the train pulled away, I thought of Rodrigo. I wondered if he would be able to get out of the house in time. Would he find a job and a place to live? Or did the police have to evict him by force? Did he realize what he'd been doing all these months? Did he realize what he had lost? But these thoughts didn't hurt me as much as they used to. I made my choice. I chose myself over a son who didn't appreciate me. I chose my peace of mind over his problems. I chose my future over his past. The train picked up speed, taking me away from the small town where I had lived most of my life. But I had no regrets. There were new places, new people, new opportunities ahead, and most importantly, a peace of mind that I had been deprived of for a long time. And behind there was an empty house, a drunken son and daughter-in-law who never realized what she had lost. Memories remained, good and bad, happy and bitter. But now it was just the past that could no longer hurt me.